In the medieval era, a rotting limb would have been a horrific experience, marked by intense pain, foul odors, and the potential for disfigurement or death. People suffering from conditions like ergotism, gangrene, or severe infections would have experienced a range of agonizing symptoms, including burning sensations, convulsions, and ultimately the breakdown of tissue. In this video, we'll explain how the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick III in the 1400s had his leg amputated during the medieval ages, as well as how he might have looked in real life. So, if you're new to my channel, welcome. Here on Mortal Faces, I recreate historic figures and talk a little bit about them, so thank you for watching. Subscribe for more, let me know in the comments who you want to see next. Frederick III, Holy Roman Emperor, developed gangrene in his left leg due to arteriosclerosis, a condition causing hardening and narrowing of the arteries. This reduced blood flow to the leg, leading to tissue death. The handwritten medical report written by one of the operating surgeons, Hans Soff, is particularly revealing because of its detailed information. According to this report, the emperor, who was staying in Linz during Lent in 1493, suffered pain in his left leg. Initially, his foot gradually became insensitive, and it took on a pale to bluish color. The skin began to die downwards and eventually turned black up to the middle of the calf. His surgeon, Hans Soff, took a look and saw the cause as opilatio, which is a blockage. According to the ancient theory of the four humors, this meant that a vital spirit has been denied access. They thought since the emperor was already old, he therefore lacked natural warmth. However, from today's perspective, the symptoms described indicate gangrene caused by circulatory disorders. As Frederick's condition deteriorated steadily in the following weeks, it was decided to amputate the rotting limb. For this purpose, his son Maximilian I endeavored to bring in the most renowned physicians of the time. Since His Imperial Majesty's operation was considered a public event, it took place on June 8, 1493, a Sunday in the presence of the court. According to Hans Soff, there were two personal physicians of Maximilian I and Frederick III, as well as 5 surgeons that were present. According to the text by Hans, the surgeons performed the operation, while the 2 trained personal physicians merely observed the proceedings. 3 of the surgeons allegedly restrained the emperor, while Hans Soff and another colleague used a small saw to cut off his foot and leg above the calf. Frederick is said to have felt no great pain and not lost much blood. The leg stump was bandaged and healed well over the next 6 to 10 weeks. He seemed okay, and after the surgery even held his leg in his arm, muttering, and seemed to contemplate with it. We often think of operations as being performed without anesthesia, but at least the Persians and Arabs were already using oral or inhaled anesthesia in the early Middle Ages. In Viking Age Scandinavia, we know minimum of 3 substances that could be used for these purposes: alcohol, hemp, and hyoscyamus. So, if it was fast and he felt no pain, then the emperor must have been knocked out to some degree, enough to finish the job. In the early Middle Ages, there were 2 main methods to amputate: the guillotine method and the flap method, which is the common one used today. An example of the amputation by one of the best medieval Arab physicians, Al-Zahrvi, said, "The limb should be slightly bound above and below the line of severance, while an assistant pulls upward on the upper bandage to retract the skin and flesh. One should make a circular incision down the bone, insert linen pads into both sides to prevent ulceration, and then cut or saw through the bone. If the hemorrhage occurs during the operation, cauterize promptly or apply some hemostatic powder before proceeding. Apply a suitable dressing and tend until cured." Another medieval text instructs, "We are therefore to make an incision with a knife between the sound and morbid parts down to the bone, with this qualification that we are never to cut the opposite adjoint, and always to include some of the sound part rather than leave any of that which is deceased." So in this case, the sound tissue is healthy tissue. When we come to the bone, the sound flesh must be retracted so as in some measure to denude it. Then it must be divided with a saw close up to the sound flesh. The end of the bone is then to be smoothed where the saw has left any asperity and the entanglements brought over it, which in this operation ought to be left loose enough to cover the entire stump as far as possible. However, successful recovery does not depend only on wound healing. A significant part of the patients with successful amputations suffer from psychological problems, ghost limbs, depression, changes in hormonal balances. For younger people, it's easier to recover, but for older people, amputation of the lower limb is problematic because they are unable to replace the loss with their physical strength, and early death often occurs. And this might have been the case with Frederick III. He was 77 when he lost his leg. The elderly emperor survived the difficult operation well for at least 10 weeks. The cause that ultimately led to his death is unknown. The reports differ. Hans Suffs names several causes that together led to Frederick's death: the consequences of the amputation, his advanced age, and last but not least, his traditional fasting on the Assumption of Mary. You see, one of the allowances during the Assumption is to eat melon. Too much melon, however, can give you diarrhea from all that fiber and water, which would have made him even more weak. Against the express advice of his doctors, the emperor fasted again that year, causing him to suffer a stroke and die on August 19th, 1493. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more, as each of your subscriptions has helped this channel grow. It allows me to continue making more content for you. Let me know in the comments who you want to see next. I do keep a list of audio suggestions, and I will see you in the next one.